And now it's time to listen to Mr. Bاسم Jibir, and then we'll move from literature, from the theater to linguistics actually, and he will present a topic which is a cognitive stylistic analysis of catharsis used by Husseini preachers. Again, we are with Husseini preachers now. Yeah. Please, Dr. Ria, present Mr. Bاسم.
Lecturer Bاسم Jibir holds a master's degree in English language and linguistics from Bamla University, and he currently a PhD candidate in the same university. He is the vice president of the Iraqi Translators Association in Najaf. He is a lecturer of linguistics at the Department of English, Faculty of Education, Islamic University. He has published 2 books and 6 articles in local and international academic journals. And he has also attended and participated in many conferences locally and globally, locally and internationally. Welcome.
Yes, thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Good morning. My paper is about the cognitive linguistic analysis of catharsis used by Husseini preachers. Now let's start with the main points. We'll talk about catharsis, we'll talk about catharsis and cognitive linguistics, then Husseini preaching, then the cognitive model used to analyze certain Husseini preaches, then certain data analyzed, and then discussion, finally the conclusions. So what is catharsis? Catharsis, which can be translated into Arabic according to certain dictionaries as al-tathhir al-nafsi or al-tathhir al-atifi. Well, for me, as a practical translation, could be a jaza in the Husseini discourse. So according to Oxford Dictionary, catharsis is a process used to relieve from all the emotions that are repressing and affecting. According to Pelling, it is an act of performance in tribal societies. There are certain tribal societies who lack the ability to receive what is recorded through writing or through different devices. So what they need someone to perform certain acts or certain movements. So that's why catharsis can be reached through these acts. According to Rhyme, which is the closest to our topic, catharsis can be collective, which means community having the same mentality. Here collective means jam'i or something related to kifai. Share the same purpose for using catharsis that could be repeated over time in a regular way as a matter, as the same matter as with the Husseini tragedy event. Sorry. So, in terms of cognitive linguistics, since it is a process, catharsis is a process, since it is something related to the emotions, then we should deal with it in terms of cognition. Then since we use certain utterances to transfer this phenomenon, then we should deal with linguistics. And here we have the cognitive linguistic approach. Now, following Goldberg, to transfer catharsis, certain linguistic or lexicalized, as we will see later, expressions and other paralinguistic factors can be referred to as the manner in which catharsis is produced. Now, dealing with it linguistically, it can be approached through the mental linguistic enterprise to express such a concept. It is used for thematic in terms of linguistics and certain stylistic stages. Otherwise, it can be used in psychology, sometimes used purgation as a treatment for certain disorders. It can be used in literary works which have a special focus on a social, political, religious issues based on Lahi's definition, 2014. To approach catharsis through stages, it is said that the event is the basic element. There must be certain event as a basic element on which linguistic choices depend in terms of encoding a certain construction. This choice is highly sensitive to culture. So here, sometimes certain audiences, as has been mentioned by Dr. Hassan, certain cultures deal with the issue of Imam Hussein alayhi salam differently. So sometimes they walk on fire, sometimes they hit their chest, sometimes they do other rituals. Now, what is meant by Husseini preaching? Of course, all of you know what is Husseini preaching. However, academically, the Husseini preach or sermon and its discourse has undergone certain developments throughout its long history, which began shortly after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, peace be upon him, until it reaches the stage in our time, which is considered the finest. Now, it has several components or parts. It starts with the introduction, where certain ayahs or certain phrases used, like Ya laytana kunna ma'akum fanafuza fawzan azima, etc. The second part is the poem or certain poetic lines. And this poem or poetic lines must be related to the theme of the speech or the theme of the sermon itself. And these lines should be recited in a special melancholic way that leads to provoke the audience's feeling regarding the tragedy. In the last lines, the preacher uses different intonation contour to have the audience participate with a special paralinguistic cues in order to draw the audience's attention. And on this point, I may contradict Dr. Mithal in terms of using the Husseini majalis for teaching. Yes, they are for teaching, basically, but how to draw the audience's attention? There must be some kind of emotions to bring them to attention. The third part, which is the lecture or the research itself or the topic, nowadays it is called research, means the subject matter of the preacher, in which the preacher discusses, and that is the most important part, the core of the sermon. Preachers are distinguished here among themselves in the area of creativity and explanation, that some of them maximize the importance of the subject if dealing with it as a matter of reality, or make a comparison between the present day and the tragedy that happened to Imam Hussein and his family members, along with his companions. The fourth part is shifting, or in Arabic, takhallus or takhlis or something, which means to shift from the topic to the sermon, of the sermon to the atmosphere of the grief and weeping. And here is the skill of the speaker, of the Husseini preacher. And here, different Husseini preachers use different strategies to shift such a connecting, to the Husseini event, using special prosodic features and so on. This stage paves the way for the next. It prepares the audience for the calamity of Imam Hussein. Now here, the calamity, or the part of the calamity, al-masiba or na'i sometimes, refers to the emotional part of the sermon, in which the preacher mentions a tragic event, and this tragic event should be related to the lecture and to Imam Hussein, and uses whatever strategy is possible to influence the audience emotionally. Again, the skillful Husseini preachers utilize the prosodic factors. They start with a low register and continue with higher and higher to motivate and engage the audience with them. And the final stage is the supplication or dua stage, is the final part in which the preacher concludes the whole sermon through praying Allah for all the attendants and so on. Now the model that has been selected here, following the terminology of Kovacic, different stages to analyze, and this model of emotion, different stages to analyze certain emotional transfer, which starts with provoking the emotion, then move to emotional state, and then the control of the emotions to the degree that one cannot hold his or her emotion anymore. Then this control will be lost, and finally the release. And here in the release, the catharsis will happen. Now the overall analysis of the data to be described, described in accordance with the following stages of the model as follows. In the stage 1, in the cause of emotion stage, the Husseini preacher makes use of prosodic features that indicate weeping, whining, tones, melody, meters, popular rhyme poetry, whose mere aim is motivating people, the audience, and high register prosodic contour. In the fourth part of the lecture, of the sermon, shifting, not only linguistic and paralinguistic cues. There are some Husseini preachers walk down among the audience to motivate them. In the second stage of the model, the audience's emotions are provoked, and some gestures are such as putting the hand on the face or nodding the head down, indicating that they are trying to be connected with the situation as produced. They utter certain prosodic contours, that's to say rise, high, fall, in order to be harmonized with the preacher's poetry. In this stage, the audience becomes connected with the preacher's motivating weeping. Now the third stage, lamenting, through special use of prosodic factors with special linguistic expressions, especially Ya Hussein, the audience tries to control their emotion. They start hitting their head and chest with other emotional moves, trying to go along with the situation at that time. Reaching the fourth stage, reaching the highest level of tragedy, which is loss of control, by using extra intonations, whining tones, high-pitched levels, mentioning utterances such as Wa Husayna, Wa Abbasa, Wa Zahra, Wa Zainaba, etc. At this stage, the audience loses control of the emotions. Here the audience bursts in tears, weeping on the tragedy and all the tragic events that are mentioned with special prosodic contours. Now the last stage, the behavioral response, is through the release of emotions. The audience keeps weeping and uttering what the preacher says. The audience starts severe weeping and sometimes crying loudly, and hitting their head and chest with the hand in a staged manner, indicating the fear and tenderness of the attendant soul. And this is the core of catharsis, fear and tenderness. Now at this point, the audience reaches the highest degrees of fear and purification, which means catharsis. So doing, the preacher has successfully influenced the audience in a way that they become very sensitive to learn what the right behavior to do. I mean, to learn what the speaker, what the Husseini speaker tells them to do, which is following the Husseini teachings. Now, by definition, if we want to discuss the topic against the data analyzed, by definition, catharsis can be found where the audience weeps due to grief and sorrow, and this can be applied to the Husseini cause. And certain Husseini preachers may lead the audience to catharsis in the second, third, and sixth parts of the sermon, as noticed in the sermons analyzed. These linguistic terms activate, I mean, using Ya Hussein, Ya Zahra, Wa Abbas, Wa Zainaba. These linguistic terms activate the deep sorrow and grief inside the audience that leads them to catharsis. Then Husseini preachers use certain prosodic factors to represent the strongest device to draw the attendants' attention to the holiness and the greatness of the event. Then the paper has come up with certain conclusions. One, the Husseini discourse is a genre that merits attention, that merits great attention actually, and investigation at different linguistic levels. Two, catharsis is a highly employed device in Husseini discourse under its cognitive implications. Three, Husseini preachers pragmatically use prosodic features to convey catharsis. What I mean by pragmatically, it means that the Husseini preachers sometimes do not cry, but they produce a crying or weeping intonations to bring the attendance or the audience's attention. Four, catharsis is utilized by Husseini preachers as a strategy to teach the audience all the objectives of the Husseini revolution and to connect the objectives to this stage for the sake of reform, using the fear then that can modulate the human behavior. And finally, leading the audience to catharsis requires a highly professional preacher with specific voice qualities. And this is the reason why we see certain or few Husseini preachers are followed by so many audience. Yes, thank you. Now, we're going to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bassett. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Now, I think it will be great if we share our ideas all together. So, will you have any comment, please? Any question concerning this topic, which is the cognitive stylistic analysis of catharsis used by Husseini preachers? Yeah? Nothing?
It's a good attempt, actually.
Yeah, please.
It's a
please
daring
doctor.
attempt to be stylistically with the Majalis from Husseiniya, with the sermons about Ashura. And I think one of the major aims behind the preacher is to make, to produce catharsis in the audience, in his audience, to purify their souls. And this is the main aim. And the second aim is the pedagogical aim, to teach them. Yes. So the main aim is spiritual, and the secondary aim is to teach them. I think I agree with you.
Yes, we can rephrase it saying that through spirituality, we can teach people. So the speaker, the Husseini speaker, tries to lead them to a certain emotional level where they are tender and soft, and they can receive whatever he tells them, he informs them.
Yes, but you have touched upon, although you have touched upon the reaction of the audience to the preacher, and this is also important. Some people hit the chest, others their head,
Yes.
others just weep. So it depends on the quality of the person, or the listener, the level of his or her knowledge. Sometimes one tear or one drop of tear is enough.
Truly counts.
Yeah, it is enough to show the real sympathy and the deep sorrow of the person. Sometimes those who are superficial need to hit the chest, to hit the heads with swords and etc. So it depends on the quality. This is a good topic to be tackled. I mean, the quality of the audience, how to raise
the response
up
of the audience, yes.
to raise the level of the audience.
Yes, I dealt with it at this level because if I want to deal with the response of the audience, I should turn my study into a certain psycholinguistic level, while mine is cognitive level. And on the other hand, we haven't talked about this issue in particular because we need to take certain samples from different audiences, and it is a difficult job. Yes, and it is a special, I mean, Shia oriented job. It's not
but I snatched this slide reference in your slide.
I also have a question. So my first question is, how did you go around collecting your data?
Yes.
And the second question, it is very difficult topic to cover, taking into consideration that it is depends on different things that we have to, measure. We cannot measure feelings, okay?
Yeah, unmeasurable.
Yeah, it's not measurable.
Yeah.
Then just if you want to do that, for example, we have to go for questionnaire or interview or different means of collecting our data. So the second thing, what is your model? Is it audio? Is it multimodal analysis? So because with all things that have been said so far, your topic tackles about everything that you mentioned. It's body language, multimodality, text, etc.
Yes. So your thanks
my first question. What's your data and how did you go around collecting?
Yes, I think both of your questions are related. Well, first I asked to select the person, the preachers. Then I had in my mind to take the popular ones. Well, this was not a good idea as advised by certain academic professors. Then I went to their levels of education, to their levels of presentation, to their sermons themselves, what they produce. Certain Husseini preachers start and end the preach crying, yes, and others present something academic.
Yeah.
Yes.
You see the collecting data is very problematic.
Yes, very delicate.
Because you will ask,
yes, very delicate at that
why
time.
did you choose this particular person, not the other person?
Yes. Yes, and the reasons are mentioned because of the academic level, because of the authorization from the higher religious, supreme religious authority.
You mentioned also popularity of the preachers
Yes,
themselves.
the last one is popularity, because I was told that popularity is not everything. It's not everything. Yes, but I included it in the end. Regarding the model, Yes, regarding the model. First, I had to take the recorded speeches. Then again, I was told by certain comments to take the live show, so that I can take all the body language, the movements, without any editing. To take all these paralinguistic factors.
Yeah.
It's very challenging topic.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Because you have sort of parts, very tiny details.
Of course, it is, and it is widely. Here are just the slides.
Yeah, tons of volumes can be written about this topic.
Of course, yes.
Which is good.